tonight's big stories. Power outs hit parts of Luzon with several power plants on forced shutdown. The Luzon grid was placed on red and yellow alerts with affected areas still being identified. Will this be a recurring problem in the coming months? We'll get some answers from NGCP spokesperson Cynthia Alabanza.
The World Health Organization has declared the end of the global COVID-19 public health emergency. But experts note the pandemic is not yet over. Local experts tell the public to not be complacent even if the public emergency has been lifted, as there is still a risk of cases climbing further. Octa Research Group's Guido David will join us for a discussion on this later in the show.
And check out this story of two UK-based Filipino nurses who were personally invited to attend the coronation of King Charles III, while President Bongbong Marcos was featured as one of the best dressed of the event. More on that later on in the show.
Welcome to the show. I'm Gretchen Ho.
I'm Maricel Halili.
And I'm Sean Yao.
Girls.
Alright, sobrang init today. Ibang level.
In the past days, actually.
The past days, painit ng painit. Kanina parang, whew! And then right now, it's raining.
Have you guys been turning on your aircons more?
Way too much.
Yes. Yes, dati
Way too
kabilang
much.
eh. Now, whole day.
Whole day.
Kaya tayo
Hindi ko siya
nagkaka-outage eh.
Kaya kami may kasalanan. Tayo ang may kasalanan.
Pero actually, hindi yun. Kasi may nangyari pala ngayon sa Masinloc, Zambales, yung power plant doon. Yung transmission line and 2 units tripped off. So it's not just the high demand, but also actually something happened with our grid.
Natamaan yung supply. Natamaan yung grid.
We need to get more answers on that actually.
Right, so for those who missed out on these details, ano ba yung nangyari, Gretch?
The Luzon grid, as I was saying, the Luzon grid has been placed on red alert from 1 to 4 p.m. today, which meant power outages in some areas. The status was downgraded to yellow alert from 4 to 6 p.m. and 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. But initially, they actually said pati 6 to 8 magkakaroon daw ng outage. The NGCP said a transmission line and 2 units of Masinloc power plant tripped earlier this afternoon, affecting the Luzon grid. 5 power plants are also on forced outage, while 3 are running on limited capacity.
Okay, yellow alert meaning, do we have enough supply?
Pag sinabing yellow, yung operating margin is not enough to meet the transmission requirements. Pag red alert, ibig sabihin insufficient talaga
Kulang na.
to meet
Ayun.
consumer demand, kaya nagkakaroon ng power outage.
Okay, so what about Meralco? Meron ba
Meralco
sila
says
advice?
it's taking them longer than expected to restore power. They also said that they're still identifying other affected areas. Meralco's franchise area covers central to southern Luzon, including Metro Manila.
Here to talk to us about today's power interruptions in Luzon, we have National Grid Corporation of the Philippines spokesperson, Attorney Cynthia Alabanza. Magandang umaga po. Ay, magandang gabi po, Attorney.
Pasensya na po. Kakauwi na. Kakauwi na.
Nasa Pilipinas na ako. Magandang gabi po.
Good evening, Gretchen, Sean, and Maricel.
Opo. Attorney, what happened at the Masinloc Power Plant? How crucial is this plant for the Luzon grid?
Well, you summarized it really well. There was a grid disturbance along one of our lines, but that was immediately restored. Unfortunately, tumabay nga yung isang malaking planta to the tune of 630 megawatts. That's a significant amount kasi that put us from normal to red alert status, which is why we started implementing manual load dropping or rotational power interruptions because we had to ration whatever was left across the Luzon grid. Now, you also mentioned that we upgraded it at around 6 p.m. We took back yung red alert from 6 to 8 p.m. and upgraded it to yellow alert. That was because one of the units that tripped this afternoon also went back online. We're expecting the second unit to go back anytime now between 7 to 8 p.m. And if that's successful, we don't expect any grid alert status to be raised over Luzon tomorrow.
All right, Attorney Cynthia, let's backtrack a little bit. I think within the past month, I remember seeing a report and actually reporting about the NGCP sounding the alarm about possible red alerts and yellow alerts this dry season kasi nga ang init. But you cited increased demand for this. Now we know that today was not such a case and meron talaga tayong technical problems na nagyari. Pero ano po yung mangyayari ngayon na May na and ito nga yung sinasabi ng Pag-asa, this will be the hottest month. Are
Yes.
there any other scheduled shutdowns? Are you projecting any thin supply in the coming weeks?
Well, heat and demand always play a role because if demand wasn't as high as it was today, then the shutdowns would not have been so drastic. Yung effect sa grid. And you correctly pointed out again, no, that May is really the projected peak for the year. Although we've seen that the actual demand is lower than what was projected earlier in the year by the Department of Energy. So somehow that mitigates it. We're still looking at the next week or so and monitoring very closely yung demand. And we're also monitoring if magkakaroon pa ng additional unplanned maintenance activities. Because ideally, when NGCP coordinates the maintenance shutdowns of all the power plants connected to its system, we ensure that they don't schedule it all at the same time so that the supply will not be affected. But it is only when they go on unplanned maintenance shutdowns that we feel the glitches in the grid and supply is not enough to meet the needs of the system.
Attorney, you spoke about heat and you spoke about demand. So yung demand po, alam naman po natin, tataas talaga yan. But yung power outages po ba lately, is that related to the high temperatures and do we expect more of that because of the El Nino? I'm not really sure how the trippings happen. What happened to the Masinloc power plant?
Well, again, no, I can't speculate on what happened to Masinloc because NGCP is a separate entity. We manage the transmission system, so we do power delivery. But it's the high temperatures not just increase demand, but also, I think, strain all equipment that run on such high temperatures. Kaya nga ngayon, umuulan. This is, I think, the nag-release ng heat, which is good, meaning lower demand ang makikita natin. So hopefully this will continue, cooler weather will continue at least for the next couple of days. But really it's the dynamic between supply, demand, and the integrity of the system, and of course the units connected to the system. That will determine whether we will feel glitches of this nature. Because glitches along a transmission system, as well as the plants connected to it, we cannot help that. But if we had enough excess, then we ought not to have felt these glitches.
All right. Sige po, marami pong salamat, NGCP spokesperson Attorney Cynthia Alabanza.
Meanwhile, some good news over in Oriental Mindoro. Fisher folk in select communities can now resume their livelihood. Makakapag-pangisda na yung ating
Yes, in
kababayan.
7
Sana,
towns in Oriental Mindoro. Again, 69 days na since lumubog si MT Princess Empress at nagpakawala ng bunker fuel sa karagatan. And 69 days later, sabi nga ng B4, pwede na raw mag-fish. Pero hindi pwede yung shellfish. So ingat-ingat lang kung balak nyo mag-shellfish. Baka kung saan galing yan.
Oo, tsaka hindi naman enough yung binibigay na ayuda. I mean, diba, binigyan sila for temporary jobs for those who were not allowed to fish in the area. But it's not enough. Come on. Magkano lang yun?
I actually expected it to be longer. Parang sabi
Ang
nila,
bilis,
this
no?
will take a year, no?
Yeah.
In cleaning up the oil spill. But it's actually good news that paano meron ng mga fishing spots, yung mga dun sa mga may ban pa rin na 6, pwede sila magpunta dun sa 7.
Yes, and speaking of ayuda, yun nga, nagko-complain nga sila daw, yung ayuda daw natanggap nila na tuna, may weird
Ito
taste.
na nga yun, Sean.
Weird.
May weird raw na
It
lasa.
seems like some residents in Oriental Mindoro are complaining about this ayuda from the national government, which Sean mentioned, a certain canned tuna brand being distributed as relief aid in Oriental Mindoro, now becoming a hot topic after some residents claim that it has a distinct taste. Ano kaya yun? The canned tuna is part of the DSWD's relief package being distributed in the province. While some find its taste a bit off, others say it's just a matter of how you cook it. The Social Welfare Department has recalled this tuna brand from its food packs. However, the DSWD insists that the cans are not expired and have been distributed since the latter part of the Duterte administration.
Pinatitingnan na rin po ng ating kalihim yung maaaring sanctions na ibigay sa supplier, kabilang po dito yung withholding ng payment at even yung blacklisting sa list po ng accredited suppliers pag nakita po natin na may problema po sa kanila pong end.
Meanwhile, how is the provincial government of Oriental Mindoro addressing this matter? We have Mon Gualvez to tell us. Mon, what's the latest?
Maricel, Oriental Mindoro Governor Bons Dolor appealed to his constituents to coordinate with them instances like this instead of taking it to social media. He even insists it could be just an issue of acquired taste of some residents. But nevertheless, Governor Dolor says that they are thankful with the help of the national government. In fact, the governor and some other provincial officials even took a bite of this canned tuna to show that it's safe to eat. Still, the provincial government is now conducting its own investigation on the said matter. Marisol.
Thanks, Mon.
And up next, after more than 3 years, COVID-19 is no longer a global health emergency. But what does that mean in terms of moving forward with the virus still around? We'll get insights from Octa fellow Professor Guido David. You're still watching The Big Story here on One News.
Right, so guys, guess what?
What?
It's officially over because the global COVID-19 health emergency has already been lifted by the World Health Organization late last week.
But only the health emergency.
Only.
Health emergency.
I don't
To make it
think
clear,
pwede mong sabihin
Yes.
tapos na yung pandemic.
COVID-19 is still here. But I think the reason why they declared that over is because the deaths are now down to like 3,500 in a week compared to hundreds of thousands before.
Yes.
Yeah, pero nasa pandemic level pa rin tayo. Actually, si Dr. Nina Gloriani, ang sabi niya, we're in a transition period. We cannot say that pandemic is over.
Yes.
Lalo na ngayon, no? Nagkakaroon ng surge dito.
Ayun
Yes,
pa.
may surge ngayon. Pero
Also-
despite that, di ba, nakikita natin ang daming bagong cases. Tas first time ko makita yung 0 deaths. Dati kasi laging may deaths. Kahit mababa, meron eh. Ngayon parang lumalabas minsan may days na 0 deaths tayo. So, having said that, no, the World Health Organization is still warning that COVID is still very much around and, of course, it is still a threat. So again, what they lifted, let's make it clear, is the COVID health emergency declaration, mainly due to the drop in the death rate, which is now at 3,500 per week from around 100,000 per week at its peak. So far, at least 7 million people around the world have already died from the virus. So, ganun nga siya kaseryoso. Ikaw ba, refresh pa ba sa memory mo yung COVID? Naalala mo ba kung nasaan ka nung una mong
Yun the first time that they declared that we'll be under enhanced community quarantine, I was in a mall looking for a buffet. Because
Kala ko naghahanap ka ng mask o
No,
ano.
I was concerned na baka isara na nila yung restaurant tapos di tayo makakain outside
Oh
for
my
the
God, yun
longest
talaga
time.
yung naisip
talaga-
mo?
Yes.
Ako grocery eh.
Grocery? Grabe yung so walang umuwi. Grabe yung planning ni Mas.
Well, actually, the end of the public health emergency means that international collaboration and funding efforts will be reduced somehow. But what does that mean for the Philippines?
Well,
the
the-
Health Department, of course, welcomed the move. The agency and the IATF are set to convene to reassess their policies and other guidelines in dealing with COVID. But an infectious disease expert also warns the public not to be complacent.
yung COVID nandiyan pa, hindi pa naman siya nawawala.
Opo.
At pwede pa rin tumaas yung mga kaso from time to time, pero natututo na tayong mabuhay ng malaya, yung hindi tayo nagtatago sa ating mga bahay.
And now that the global public health emergency is over, another big question is whether the pandemic has also ended. Yun nga yung tinatanong natin. So, we asked Maan Enriquez for the answers that she got from some experts. Maan?
Yes, Sean, though the lifting of the global health emergency is a big step towards the end of the pandemic, experts warn that the pandemic is not yet over. Infectious disease expert Ronjin Solante says the government must continue to focus on vaccinations and surveillance, and the public must also continue to comply with protective measures like mask wearing in high-risk areas. So if may sakit ka or you're in contact with someone who is sick, wear a mask. Iloilo Representative and former Health Secretary Janet Guerin urges the government to review its funding for COVID-19 response. She believes allocation should be focused on providing free treatment and testing for Filipinos rather than initiatives that have become less important, like PhilHealth packages for isolation and quarantine. Sean.
Thank you for that, Maan Enriquez.
Here to join us for a discussion on the end of the global public health emergency is Octa Research Fellow Guido David. Sir, after the declaration of WHO, and then there's President Bongbong Marcos saying that up until now he's still considering the declaration or the implementation of mandatory face mask. Ano na ba talaga? Ano na yung sitwasyon ng COVID-19 sa bansa natin?
Well, good evening, Mase and Gretchen and Sean. So right now, cases are still rising. The positivity rate is increasing in Metro Manila and many other provinces. So the virus is definitely still here. Pero tama yung sinabi nyo na this is much more manageable compared to what we saw in 2020 and 2021. The mutation of the virus into the Omicron has somehow made it more manageable. The deaths have reduced, the number of deaths, and also the hospitalization impact on hospitals has decreased with this, with the mutation. So, but we should not be complacent that the declaration does not mean that the disease is no longer around. In fact, I've been hearing this from even some of my friends na parang they saw the announcement and they thought, wala na ba yung virus? It's still here. And there will still be some severe cases kahit na konti. Some people may still get severe COVID and some people may still die kahit konti. So that's why our protective measures are still important, and we should not minimize or ignore the institutions we have set up for COVID, which we can also use for other diseases. Like the Congress has already passed into law or at least the CDC, the Center for Disease Control of the Philippines, is already tackled in Congress. So it's something that will help us monitor and do surveillance on not just COVID, but also on other diseases.
What does your data say about the variant that's going around? Is this the Arcturus variant? And is the surge that we're experiencing now a worldwide trend? Ganon din ba sa ibang bansa?
Well, I think that's why the WHO declared or made that declaration, because not all countries are seeing a surge right now. And in fact, we saw this then last year. So this is going to be the trend. There will be some countries which will probably experience some rise in cases. And this variant that we're concerned about, well, it's not alarming, but we're sort of a little concerned about it, is supposedly the XBB 1.16. And we believe that it may be already spreading in the country. We don't have the data for that. But at least based on the rate of spread of the disease, we believe that it's caused by this XBB 1.16, also called the Arcturus subvariant. So, but the data shows, especially from other countries, that it's not that much different from the other Omicron variants or subvariants. That it's highly transmissible, but it will not cause severe COVID for most cases. I say most, so wag tayong makampante. There will still be some people who will catch a severe form of the virus.
All right, one last question, Guido. On the policy side, what else can we do? I mean, mostly I think this announcement is so people and countries around the world can adjust their policy. We actually tried to reach out to the DOH, but they are still, I think, conferring with the IATF about how to address this declaration from the WHO. What major changes would you make? Pwede na bang buksan lahat?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and of course, the Department of Health will have to, sit down with the concerned agencies. So one policy that will be impacted will be the vaccination and the procurement of vaccines. Actually, our own state of emergency lapsed in December of 2022. So technically, we're not able to bring in vaccines anymore under the EUA because the EUA lapsed with EUA or Emergency Use Authorization lapsed with the state of emergency. And then other policies that can be looked at will be protocols for travelers, especially for international travelers. Now, the declaration by WHO should not really impact our local policies. For example, in hospitals, we're still required to wear face masks, and in some other places, we may be advised to be wearing face masks. So those will probably not be impacted. But for international travel, there may be an effect here because the U.S. is also ending its state of emergency, and it may not be advantageous, in terms of international relations, to still have protocols for international travelers. Let's say, requiring testing for those who are unvaccinated is one of these protocols. So we will have to see what changes they will be making. But as far as monitoring, I hope that we'll continue to monitor not just COVID, but all other diseases, because it is advantageous for us as individuals to have the best information available so we can make the best decisions for ourselves. So surveillance and monitoring, I believe, are still going to be relevant, even if the virus is considered to be, no longer a global threat.
All right, thank you for joining us, Professor Guido David.
After this quick break, Filipino athletes continue to rake in more medals at the 2023 SEA Games in Cambodia. We'll get the latest on today's events with One Sports' Paulo Del Rosario when the big story returns. Keep it here on One News.
You're still watching the big story here on One News. What else do we have tonight, girls?
Well, girls, it wasn't just President Bongbong Marcos and First Lady Liza Araneta Marcos, the only Filipinos present during the coronation of King Charles
Bakit wala ka
III.
doon?
Pero hindi kami kasama.
Hindi na siya. Umuwi na
Naiwan
siya.
kami sa Washington.
Naiwan siya, tapos
Oo.
umuwi ng Pilipinas.
Tapos umuwi kami ng Pilipinas. Sila lang dalawa yung nagpunta doon. I think
So, walang
together with
reporters?
other officials, may mga reporters na nagpunta straight to United Kingdom. Pero yung mga reporters from Washington, D.C. were not allowed to join the president. Yes. So aside from the president, there were also two UK-based Filipino nurses who were invited to the coronation. These were Nurse Saiza Makutay Malok and Charito Romano. Both nurses were British Empire Medal awardees in the Queen Honors 2021 for services to care in the community during the pandemic. Speaking on 1PH 1 Balita Pilipinas, the nurses expressed their surreal feelings and their gratitude because they were chosen to represent the Filipinos on this momentous occasion.
Nakaka-humble dahil nabigyan kami ng pagkakataon na mas saksihan yung isa sa pinaka-importanteng okasyon sa United Kingdom.
Hindi po ako nagdalawang isip na magsuot ng Filipiniana. Nung na-receive ko po yung invitation, unang-una kong ginawa. Una po, hindi pa parang nagsisink in yung mga nangyayari. Parang nasa isang malaking show ka lang na nakikita mo yung mga nakikita mo sa TV.
Speaking of President Marcos, he and the First Lady were named among the best dressed in the coronation. That's according to the Telegraph UK.
Barong yung suot niya, no?
Pareho silang nakabarong.
At
no?
saka
Parehong
Filipiniana.
Tsaka dati si Pangulo, maikli yung barong niya.
Si,
pero
you
may
mean si
mahaba
dating,
na.
Si dating President
Pangulo
Duterte.
Rodrigo.
Oo.
Oo.
Si Bongbong Marcos, noong una parang awkward yung pagsuot niya ng barong. Ngayon tama na daw.
For me, on the contrary, Gretch, sobrang galing manamit ni President Bongbong Marcos.
Totoo
Sa
yan.
lahat ng pwede mong ilait sa kanya, laging napaka-flawless ng buhok niya, tsaka nung outfit niya. And yes, napansin ko rin yung chemisa, ano ba yung tawag
Camisa de
Camisa de
Chino.
Chino.
Oo.
Yun. Yung Camisa de Chino niya laging proper, mahaba.
Yes,
Tapos
long
yung hindi
sleeves.
naka-tuck in, dapat naka-on tuck.
Si First Lady, ganda rin. Lagi rin naka,
Lagi rin
maayos.
naka-Filipiniana.
Yes,
Ganda,
pero
maganda
lagi
yung
naman din sila may
punta.
kasamang
May
glam
stylist ba?
team.
May glam team.
Meron din
Meron.
silang makeup artist kapag lumalabas sila. Of course, para presentable din naman
And
sila.
deserve naman yung best dress.
Well, we're known for that. Yes. Diba? So, represent.
Alright.
Speaking of representing,
Yes, Gretchen. Speaking of representing, day 3 na nga ng Southeast Asian Games sa Cambodia. And malapit na matapos tong third day, we've seen a lot of our Filipino athletes compete for the gold. I think 5th tayo in most number of medals right now. Talo pa rin tayo sa Cambodia, Thailand, Indonesia, and Vietnam.
Pero lumalaban
Pero
tayo.
lumalaban
Like
tayo,
parang
hindi.
kahapon, nung when I checked yung morning tally, pang number 5 tayo. Pero pagdating ng afternoon, number 2 tayo. And then balik tayo sa number 5. So parang feeling ko,
Gumagalaw.
hindi,
Maraming
hindi
moving
malayo.
parts. Marami
Oo,
talaga.
movement.
there's a lot that happened, especially with our Olympians already hitting the field. So let's get the latest on that from Phnom Penh from One Sports correspondent Paulo Del Rosario. Hello, Paulo. Magandang gabi.
Well, another big Gretchen, and of course, our Tokyo Olympians did show off today here in Phnom Penh, Cambodia. Messi Petesio, EJ Obiena, Saloyulo also action and impressed in a big way. Itong si EJ Obiena actually just finished his competition. He ended up smashing the record, the SEA Games record of 5.46 with a 5.65 meter jump to claim the gold medal. And tama nga si Sean kanina that hindi pa updated yung mga ibang gold medal statistics dito. And we will see more updates on that later on in the day because the Philippines won quite a few gold medals later on in the afternoon, Greg.
Alright, yun nga, nabanggit nga natin. Alam, kanina meron nagkaroon ng konting aberya dun kay EJ, I think na-suspend muna yung laro, What are the athletes facing there when it comes to the weather? How is that on that end?
The weather has been an ongoing topic when you consider the heat that they have to go through, the rain that just happened a while ago, kind of suspend yung play ni EJ Obiena. There is still a lot to deal with in terms of the weather, including basketball, which will have to play in an open-air venue And that has been an issue here for some of our players in terms of dealing with the heat. Kasi hindi sila sanay with the type of temperatures that they're dealing with here, Gretchen.
Tumutuklap yung court. Nakita ko parang inaangat nila kanina. Is that because of the heat or is that because of the venue is not appropriate for playing?
Well, at the moment, it looks like it is part of the venue. It is because the Taraflex used in the venue seems a bit thin, and that may have to be addressed moving forward. But at the moment, that is the only venue issue that we've heard from our team so far in terms of the playability. Kanina nakausap ko si EJ Obena, sinabi niya pati yung box na kung saan nilalagay yung pole for the pole ball competition, that's not necessarily regulation or not what he's used to. But he says it's an even playing field because everyone uses that same box. Gretchen.
Okay, Pau, ano ba ang pinaka-inaabangan dyan ng Filipino contingent? What other games? I think for maybe tomorrow, what would be the highlights and what are you personally watching out for?
Well, the Philippines basketball teams will start their campaigns tomorrow. So it's interesting to see kung paano yung redeem team natin will be performing here in the 32nd Southeast Asian Games. And of course, a lot of medal matches. Of course, boxing right now in particular has 10 guaranteed medals after a 3 of 4 showing because day number 3 of the boxing competition. So let's see whether or not they can fall in even more medals, or rather more gold medals for the national team moving forward.
Well, it is just the third day. Hope for more good news in the coming days and more Olympians fighting for our country. Thank you so much for those updates. That was Paolo Del Rosario reporting to us from Cambodia, the site of the 32nd Southeast Asian Games.
And we have run out of time. We have run over time. So that's it from us tonight.
We are One News, all sides, all the time.
This has been The Big Story. Thank you and good night.